All right, we're what are we? 6 days away from the Academy Awards now. I just wanted to do something kind of a little holdover video before we get into final predictions. Of course, that'll be coming out probably Friday-ish, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so what we're basically going to do here is because remember there are 24 categories at the Oscars. From what I'm seeing right now, 17 of those categories I'm pretty solid on. 17 of those I'm almost 100% confident on what's going to win that, or if something else takes it over, it's going to be a big kind of upset in those categories. So we're going to take a look at 7 categories here today that I'm on the fence about, or I'm taking a risk on, or they're coin flip kind of categories where it's either going to be this or this, and there's an argument for both. So, or sometimes there's 3 or more in the mix as well on some of these categories. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started here with Best Picture. Yeah, big surprise, right? We're still trying to grasp our way through what's happening here now. Strangely enough, I'm looking at Gold Derby right now, actually, and the odds right now are actually favoring 3 Billboards now to win. And we did see it perform very well at BAFTA. We have that stat where if 3 Billboards loses Best Picture, it'll be the first time in over 50 years. I think 54 is the exact number now. That a film has won both Best British Film and Best Film overall at BAFTA and then gone on to lose Best Picture. Dr. Strangelove was the last one to do that. Otherwise, King's Speech has done it, A Man for All Seasons. I think My Fair Lady did it. Well, I forget how the British, because their release was different back then, because Dr. Strangelove and My Fair Lady were the same year. So I think I can't remember if Strangelove counted as 63 there, or if it counted as 64, but whatever. There was, what was the other one I was thinking of? But there was another one there in the 60s where they just agreed all the time on those 2 categories, and then they turned out Best Picture winners. So here we've seen, yeah, even though 3 Billboards is doing great, I'm starting to have my doubts now. And I'm not, obviously, I would just love to see it win, number 1, because it is my favorite film of the year. Number 2, also because I was come on, I was the first one, right? I was like in this online kind of prognostication thing where I don't have an official banner to go on. I was just doing this as a hobby. Nobody else was saying 3 Billboards when I was saying it back in early November. I think it was the second weekend of November there is when I switched over. And so, of course, that'd be a bragging rights thing that I could hold over everybody else for, 5 minutes, and then who knows what else. But anyway, so I would love to see it win for those 2 reasons, obviously. Number 3, I think it's representative of where we are in the country right now. There's divisiveness in the film. There's divisiveness in the country. We're seeing, there's a strong female lead. We're seeing female empowerment has been a big proponent here in the last few months, especially with the Me Too movement and the downfall of all these sexual predators, especially in Hollywood. So it's really a movie for the time, made by an outsider, kind of looking in and really poking fun at America, but at the same time saying, hey, we're not as perfect as we proclaim to be. So with all that being said, though, it is a close battle, because this, obviously, Shape of Water, Get Out. I'm starting to think those are the 3 it's going to come down to. I think Lady Bird has started to really drop off in the conversation now. It feels like it's it's a movie, obviously, made by a female director and written by a female, of course, Greta Gerwig. So that makes it feel important. But I feel like between that and Get Out, we've seen, even though in some other categories, some other award shows, we've seen them kind of be neck and neck fighting for that social relevance issue. We've seen, if it has to be one of those 2, Get Out is the one that always gets it, whether that's at Critics' Choice for Original Screenplay or the WGA for Original Screenplay, when either 3 Billboards wasn't as strong or not in competition, or Shape of Water was there and just wasn't in as tight competition. So I'm starting to think now that, and now Shape of Water, now we've seen the lawsuit is actually happening over this plagiarism stuff against Del Toro. And I've seen, and to be fair, even though I saw this by, I think it was Vanity Fair was one of the first ones to report on it, like close to 3 weeks ago now. Um, I'm a big admirer of the film Shape of Water. It's in my top 5 of the year. It's actually number 4 on my list. And I would, if it won, I wouldn't have anything against it. And I would be like, yeah, it's a good pick. In the same way Three Billboards think is a good pick, in the same way I think Get Out is a good pick. Lady Bird, I'd be honest. I'd be a slightly disappointed if they picked that one, because for me personally, it didn't work as well as it did for many other people. But at the same time, I got enjoyment out of it. I laughed at it a lot. I'm a big sucker for coming of age movies, but I thought there were maybe there's obviously better examples of coming of age stories, and especially written and directed by females, like I mentioned. Edge of 17 from last year with Haley Steinfeld, I thought was a superior film in most aspects when you compare the two, except maybe direction and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's between these three now. And now with Shape of Water, I'm starting to sense, now obviously in one article I read about this plagiarism stuff, now that the lawsuit has officially been filed, they had some very leading terms and some very direct kind of statements there that for me personally, I don't buy. It almost seems like it's written in a way that makes it look more suspicious than maybe it actually is. And for me personally, plagiarism is something definitely we need to take seriously. But at the same time, you do have an atmosphere now of film where it's like almost impossible to come up with a totally 100% original story that doesn't borrow something or other from something or other. It's not like there's the whole concept, it's kind of a mini spoiler, I guess, for Shape of Water. But you have the Russian spy subplot. Well, nobody's accusing the movie of stealing that because so many hundred other movies have had Russian spies as a co-plot, subplot kind of thing. And it's, there were some very leading examples there in the article I read, at least. And I'm like, well, if they're true, then okay, maybe there's more to the story here. But just the way it was phrased and the word choice given, it almost felt like the person who was doing the article, I can't remember which site or who the author was, but they almost wrote it in a way that made it look like, guilty before proven innocent kind of thing. Which, for me, that, for me personally, some of the other sexual allegation and misconduct stuff, some of the other reports I've read, through the whole last 5 months or so, whatever it's been now, some of those were written in the same way, but, I think, they're two different stories, obviously, and two different topics, two different problems. But at the same time, I think this one, this was one I read. I mean, I've read other ones that were way more objective about it, some that 100% defended Del Toro and the producers and the other writer, Vanessa Taylor, I think, is the co-writer on the script. So at the same time, though, I'm starting to get the sense, and this landed like the second day of Oscar voting, that was Wednesday of last week, that the lawsuit actually was filed and stuff, or it was reported that it had been filed, whatever the actual date was. So that is, top of mind of Oscar voters, of course, is going to be, obviously you had some people that voted the first day, and that's done, and there's always a batch of people that do. But I think as we saw with the Oscar nominations, with James Franco missing, which I've heard some arguments that, yeah, maybe that prediction for him to get in wasn't as solid as maybe some of us were taking. But I think the fact that he got all the allegations against him pretty much a couple days after the Globe win, when we still had, what was it, roughly it was like to the end of that week, I think was when voting ended. I think there were enough people, I think, that read that were, maybe had him in on the ballot for getting in for Best Actor. And then they read that and they're like, okay, nope. And then they put in Denzel or whoever else they chose for that slot. I think there were enough of them at the end. So that maybe shows us that, yeah, some voters do wait until the last minute to kind of let everything settle, or let their brains kind of fire off a couple of more ideas. And in this case, since Shape of Water, it's coming out at that time there, it could make a big impact, I think, in some of the votes here. Now, as for Best Picture, I think it's this whole plagiarism stuff. it doesn't hurt Best Picture as much as it does original screenplay and a couple other categories. I think he's safe for director. He's good to go on that. He's won everything he could. So that's solid. But for Best Picture, I think that hurts it. And now this gives an opportunity for either Three Billboards to capitalize on this, if it was everybody's second vote or whatever, or are they going to go somewhere else? And for me, that other option would be Get Out. Now, stick with me here, because as we've seen the last 5 years, if you're winning screenplay, if you're winning picture, you're taking your respective screenplay prize with you. Now, at this moment, original screenplay, which is another category here that we're going to talk about today, original screenplay right now feels like a coin flip between Three Billboards and Get Out. And they've both won a couple of screenplay prizes in big categories. Get Out won the Critics' Choice in the WGA, whereas BAFTA and the Globe went to Three Billboards. And largely, those wins for Three Billboards were without the presence of Get Out in the case of Golden Globes, or in the case of BAFTA, where Get Out was not nominated in nearly as many categories as it was, say, at Critics' Choice. Three Billboards was not eligible at the WGA, so there's a chance that Three Billboards could have pulled ahead there. But since it wasn't eligible, of course, Get Out, I think, had a much easier time. At the same time, though, not being eligible for WGA didn't hurt Birdman. That won in that year. There was a couple other examples I saw, but now they're... 12 Years a Slave was not eligible. That year it won Adapted, but that was kind of an easier category. Was it Argo? No, it was a different one. It wasn't Spike Jonze. I think he won WGA. It was from that, like, 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. Because I think, I can't remember what that last one was. But yeah, I've seen a couple. Yeah, they've listed some other WGA non-nominees that have won at the Oscars. So I mean, it's definitely. I have Three Billboards winning at this point, but I think there's a possibility too. As I've said, 2011 was the last time that we had your Best Picture winner not take the screenplay prize, and then before that, tons of other examples. But anyways, at this rate, I'm starting to think screenplay is obviously going to be before Best Picture. Now, if it goes to Three Billboards for original screenplay, then I think that lets us know Three Billboards probably has Best Picture. Probably, I would say 75%. You know, with that little 25% margin being, you know, other stuff. Because for me, Get Out is not the film that's going to do it this year, where it wins Best Picture and nothing else. I mean, we haven't seen that since Grand Hotel back in '32. I think that record's going to stand for all time. I don't know if we're ever going to see that kind of situation again. I just don't see, if Get Out is going to win Best Picture, it's got to take screenplay. If it doesn't, then yeah, that breaks, you know, an 85-year-old rule or whatever it is now. And I just don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think so. So if Get Out wins screenplay, that opens up the possibility of either that wins Best Picture, or maybe if they don't feel comfortable with this plagiarism stuff, giving Del Toro screenplay, or if they just didn't have enough votes, then that opens it up, I think, for Shape of Water to possibly win Best Picture, or for Get Out to win Best Picture. So that screenplay category is tough. I mean, either way, I'm going to be happy with whoever wins it, because Get Out and Three Billboards are my number one and my number two of the year. So, and same with Best Picture if it goes to one of those two. And Shape of Water, I would be happy with. So, in that respect, yeah, it's close, because, you know, and as I've said, though, when it comes to screenplay prizes, it's not as common as you think for actors to win here. I mean, obviously, like I said, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, Sofia Coppola, Costner didn't win. No, that was a different screenwriter. There was one other example I was thinking of here recently. Spike Jonze does some acting on the side, but he's primarily known as a writer. In the same way, I think I mentioned it last time, where, yeah, Greta, who's also up for Lady Bird for original screenplay, and Jordan, yeah, they're known, you know, they've done writing on the side. Like, Greta has co-written some of Noah Baumbach's stuff, and Jordan Peele obviously writes for the Key and Peele show, but they're primarily known as actors first before they're known as screenwriters. So, and in original screenplay especially, they like giving it to actual writers who are known for writing and sometimes directing, as we saw last year with Kenneth Lonergan, or Spike Jonze or uh, uh, some of the other ones there. It's just not common for your film actors turned writers turned directors to suddenly win for screenplay. So the odds there favor Three Billboards. It's also got some of the more recent wins for screenplay for BAFTA there. Yeah, so that's what I'm going with, is just Three Billboards winning both of those. So at the moment, I do have both Get Out and Lady Bird going home empty-handed, which means, of course, nothing but bad press for the Academy for some of these kind of uppity progress people who want more diversity with their winners and want more women winners, want more African American winners, and so on and so forth. And for me, at least, I'd be fine with Jordan Peele winning screenplay. I would be a little disappointed if Greta won, again, just based off the fact that I wasn't as big a fan of the movie as most other people were. But at the same time, I gotta say, the person who does the best job deserves the win, which for me, that was Martin McDonagh for Three Billboards. And, I've always been, when it comes to diversity and stuff, I'm always fine with diversity. Like, I don't have a big issue with it. It's not a game changer for me or anything. It's not a thing. But for some people, their argument is the Academy is losing if they're not giving it to an African American, in this case, because he's African American. That, for me, is like, well, you're kind of defeating the whole purpose of best, this or best that. It's taking all of that other stuff aside and saying who did the best work. Now, obviously, there's some people that say that they should win because it was the best work. Yeah, that's fine. And that's your argument. And that's, I have my argument in the same way that it should be Three Billboards. And I don't think we have an issue there. But for those who only say it should be this because it's a female, because it's an African American, and taking all other aspects, including what they are actually judging here, the material aside, it's just, for me, that's not a sound argument. And it's not really what should be happening here. And I know I made that, kind of same sentiments here a few months ago with the whole, woke Twitter bullshit, which is, happily that kind of died down not long after it peaked there. But anyways, so, but yeah. And again, like I said, if Jordan Peele does win screenplay or if Get Out wins picture, obviously I think it's more than a diversity statement in this case, because Get Out is a fantastic movie. And it's a great original concept, very well executed. I'm also glad Peele's in for director. I would have put him in. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's more that than it is the diversity thing. And at the same time, it's a win-win, because sure, I don't have a problem with minorities, including African Americans or women, winning in categories. That's never been a problem for me. It's just, if they win for only political reasons, that's when I kind of get a little upset. Just, if there's an obvious alternative. Now, if they did the best work in that category, then that's just the way it is. But anyways, now that I've gotten myself probably into hot water with some people, I don't care. That being said, though, yeah, it's not going to be a huge issue for me if Peele wins. But if it's Greta, then I'll be a little taken aback and a little upset. But hey, I'll get over it. Okay, so moving on now to some of the other categories. The rest of these are all tech categories and smaller categories here. Film editing is one I'm on the fence about, because, most of the odds are favoring Dunkirk at this point. And it is Lee Smith, who's been nominated a few times. He's never won an Academy Award. Mistakenly was looked over for stuff like Inception and all that. We've seen Dunkirk and Baby Driver tied at Critics' Choice. BAFTA went to Baby Driver. And then for the Ace Eddie Award, Dunkirk won drama, and it was I, Tonya that won the comedy. They split it there at Ace Eddie. So I think I, Tonya, it would be like one of those wins like Bourne Ultimatum, where it was kind of out of nowhere, or Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, that was really out of nowhere, where he had, and in this case, I could see it happening. I could, because if Baby Driver and Dunkirk start, ramming heads there, and enough split voting happens, that opens the door for something like I, Tonya, which if you have that passion vote there, that could take it. It's also, and they don't put the names on the ballots here for some of these tech categories. That is a female editor, and I know, going back to that other point there, again, for me, it's all about the work. It doesn't, all the other stuff, I set that aside. So, all the politics and stuff. So, I mean, I'll mention it if it's in the news and stuff. Like, that's why I, mention all this stuff with Shape of Water. But for me, it doesn't impact my view on the work or on the respective film. Anyway, so I, Tonya, though, it is a female editor, and female editors very, very rarely are recognized in these kind of categories. Mainly, it's like costume design or sometimes production design, makeup. Yeah, and then you'll have more female than male winners in that case. And in that case, cinematography this year, of course, Rachel Morrison nominated for Mudbound. But I think that's Roger Deakins. I think he's pretty much got it locked up. We'll get back to, there's a connection there that we'll get back to. But anyways, but with this one, I do think I, Tonya, since it's not in for picture, it'd be the first film editing winner in several years to not be up for picture. I think Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was the last one, I think, actually. Because, then you have Argo, then you had Gravity, and so on and so forth, and all of them were nominated. So it'd be the first one in about 6 years to win editing without a Best Picture nomination. I think before that you have to go back to Bourne Ultimatum. I think so. Yeah. So it's happened before, and in the last 10 years it's happened twice. So it's a possibility, but I think I just don't think it has quite enough support to get there. Now, here's the thing with me is Baby Driver. It's, when you look at the two, it's, and sometimes how these categories are decided, like costume design, it's the most costumes. With makeup and hairstyling, it's the most makeup. Production design is the most art direction, and score is the most, the one that has the most feeling to it. So with the most editing in that case, that I think helped something like Whiplash over Boyhood when Whiplash lost Ace Eddie. I don't know how Gravity, I think, just won this that year when it was just in that kind of mini sweep in the tech categories, whereas Captain Phillips that year I think was the more obvious, the most editing, and that didn't win. Last year the most editing was Hacksaw Ridge. I think that's what helped that. Even though we did have La La Land, I think was the favorite for most people. But anyways. So in that case, I think the most editing in this is probably Baby Driver. There's more long shots, I think, in Dunkirk. And for me, some of the editing issues were what I had with the film overall with Dunkirk. When you're going from the three different perspectives, for me, it took a while to get into that flavor and into that style of what Nolan was doing. So, I think that, part of the blame is on the editing. Also, part of the blame is on the story, too. But yeah, so right now I do have Dunkirk winning this, but I would not be shocked if Baby Driver won. And I think there is a passion for Baby Driver. It's also up for a couple sound categories. It's from a very popular director who historically has not been recognized by the Academy. So it's a way for him to win as well. The name's escaping me right now. I know everybody's yelling at me in the comments section there, but Edgar Wright, there we go. Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's up again. This is a kind of a coin flip category with a possible upset by I, Tonya, but it would be one of those weird years if it was I, Tonya, and we might be due for one of those just to add that. Okay, next category is Best Original Song. This one early on I thought was just going to be 100% down for Coco, for Remember Me. But we're seeing This Is Me. It won the Globe over Coco in that category. Another thing, too, I haven't been watching the Olympics very much here, but for the American events and stuff, This Is Me has been something they've been playing, at least here in the U.S. with the television showings and stuff. They've been playing it pretty frequently, so that, for any Oscar voters that are watching the Olympics, that's something they'll notice as well if they're familiar with it. Plus, Greatest Showman is also, it's been a very, very big performer at the box office. Coco did very well too, and yeah, it's This Is Me is kind of like the anthem for for diversity and an anthem for the minorities and stuff, which can be, definitely a big player there. And for me personally, I was not a fan of Greatest Showman. It was kind of a corny movie to me, kind of garbage. Okay, but that all that aside, though, I know there's some people that have seen this movie probably 5 or 6 times in theaters, and they're gonna watch it on replay over and over again as soon as it's out on digital or DVD or whatever. So there is passion there for the movie for sure, and passion for the song, and passion for the whole idea of it too. At the same time, Disney and Pixar, they have a history of winning this category in the kind of renaissance in the 80s and 90s. I think it was pretty much every animated movie won this category, whether that's Little Mermaid or Lion King. Pocahontas even won in a more crowded year. But oh, come on, that should have been Randy Newman that year, right? For the You've Got a Friend in Me from Toy Story. That should have been 100%. But even then, we've seen a lot of Pixar movies win, like the Monsters, Inc. one. The other 2 Randy Newman wins were actually that one and Toy Story 3. Though arguably that one was in the Toy Story 3 was in a very weak year for original song. What was the other one? I just thought of it, and now I'm forgetting it. Tarzan, Phil Collins winning for another Disney one. What else? Even Prince of Egypt, which is DreamWorks, but that's another animated one that's one song. Plus, you look at it, Coco is also up for animated feature. So yeah, there's more of that going on too, where it's a little more popular in the Academy in that way. And I think it's got animated feature down. That's probably one of the biggest locks of any of these smaller categories of the night. Yeah, so I do have Coco winning this, but again, I wouldn't be upset I wouldn't be shocked. I'll put it that way if it was Greatest Showman. And for me, it feels like from a couple years ago, when we had Spectre and The Hunting Ground, when we had those 2 songs in competition. And like Critics' Choice, I think, had an original song category that year, and they went with Hunting Ground, and then something or other went with Hunting Ground, and then they had Lady Gaga presented at she sang it at the Oscars very well, and they had even Joe Biden introduce the song, and they still, it made him look terrible for that, but because it was a very important subject matter, and Spectre was kind of this kind of forgettable Bond song from Sam Smith, who then went on stage and tried to act like he was the first gay winner in this category when there were, like 3 or 4 other examples. So, I mean, it just made the Academy look like asses for like 10 minutes. But, so anyways, so not to say that that's going to be the same this year, but it's like, This Is Me won the Globe, Spectre had won the Globe, so it's just, something that's coming to mind here. So I can see it going down that way, but at the same time, Hunting Ground was not, it wasn't up for documentary. It wasn't a huge box office player the way that Coco is. And Coco, yeah, for its money, has gotten more than Greatest Showman. So yeah, I do think it is Coco, but it's definitely going to be one that that's up for grabs, and I think it's between those 2, I think. Okay, the next 2 are the sound categories. Yeah, early on I was thinking Dunkirk, move on. Now, at the same time, though, I'm starting to think now. Okay, in recent years, we've seen a few more splits in this category. Of course, going back to like the 90s and stuff when they only had 1 sound category, just takes care of it. But once we've had 2, we have seen that actually when they match up, like with Mad Max or with Gravity and stuff, it happens when you have a film that's on a sweep for these kind of tech categories. So we don't have that this year. Production design, I think, is going to go to Shape of Water, and score will go to Shape of Water, but I think that's all it's going to get. Song is going to be, one of 2 wins, or the only win for one of those films. I have visual effects going to a different movie. I have cinematography going to the same movie as visual effects. We'll get to that in a minute. Costume design, that's Phantom Thread. That's not going to win anything else. So, and I have film editing going to Dunkirk at the moment, but that could easily be Baby Driver. So we don't see a film that's going to totally, like Mad Max did a few years ago, or with Gravity, or what was the other one? Inception won, I think, both sound categories, and it also won cinematography and visual effects. I think it's once you get to like 4 is when I would start considering it like a mini sweep. So in that case, I'm starting to think Dunkirk at most it's looking at 3 wins, and that's if it wins sound, both sound categories and film editing. And actually, Baby Driver could be in that same boat where it wins all 3 of the categories. I don't think so, but that could happen. Blade Runner could win just 2. I don't see it winning both of these, and I don't see Shape of Water or Last Jedi winning these. So, so what I'm having right now is I think it will split again this year because we don't have that solid one film that's going to just go through and win both of these. I think Dunkirk takes sound editing because sound editing is the shoot 'em up movie. It's the the war picture we've seen. With the exception last year where Hacksaw Ridge I think was the favorite to win this, and they ended up going with Arrival. I had picked Arrival too for whatever reason. I had picked Arrival, then switched back over to Hacksaw Ridge, and stupidly. I can't. What was my thing? Oh yeah, I think Arrival had won Best Sound at BAFTA. And other than The Revenant, they've been correct every year with that. And sound this year went with Dunkirk. So in that case, I do think Dunkirk, it's got to win at least one of these. So if I really wanted to cover my ground here to make sure it's got its win, I would put it in both. I did that with The Revenant, but that both of them went to Mad Max when it was on that sweep. So in that case, sound editing I have going to Dunkirk, and sound mixing I have going to Baby Driver. Now, Baby Driver, yeah, it's got 3 nominations. Like I said, Edgar Wright and so on. I think they'll want to give it something. And sound editing, sound editing, yeah, I think goes to Dunkirk, but sound mixing, I think goes to Baby Driver. You got all the gunshots, you've got all the music you've got to play into it. And as we've seen in recent years, when it's like Whiplash or Les Mis, when it's a musical like this, if it's not La La Land, for whatever reason that didn't win this category last year, they went with Hacksaw, for whatever reason, they mixed those 2 up. When it's got music propelled into it, we can even go back to Bird winning Best Sound in the 80s. They like to give that. And with Baby Driver being, it was in the comedy musical category at the Globes, I think more so for the comedy than for actual music. But with, the music and the soundtrack being a big player in the film, it almost feels like a character in the movie once you've seen it. I think that's going to be it. And we always have 1 or 2 surprise wins at the Oscars. So I think this is one. I'm going against the grain on this one, but I'm starting to think this one goes to Baby Driver. At the same time, yeah, it could easily be Dunkirk. Most of the odds are favoring Dunkirk, so I'm going on a limb there. I'll see if that pays off or not, and I'll have final predictions on probably Friday or Saturday, whatever. I'll made up my mind by then. Visual effects is another one I'm taking a little bit of a gamble on. I'm going with Blade Runner here. Now, at the same time, it could be War for the Planet of the Apes very easily. I think it's between these 2. Originally, I thought Star Wars maybe had a little bit of say in this, but I'm just not picking that one, I don't think. Force Awakens couldn't win with more nominations. I don't see how Last Jedi wins this one. So, War for the Planet of the Apes, it won the Critics' Choice and the Visual Effects Society for its effects. So did the second one, Dawn for the Planet of the Apes. And if memory serves me correctly, so did the first one, Rise for the Planet of the Apes. What do those 2 have in common? They lost at the Oscars. And they lost to, and in this case, with Dawn for the Planet of the Apes, that one lost to Interstellar, which was the most nominated film in that category, as I recall. No, was it? I think it was. Yeah, because the other ones were like Guardians, Cap, Winter Soldier, and X-Men Days of Future Past. And those other, the exception of Guardians, the other 2, that was the only nominee it had, was visual effects. So, when you look at this, Blade Runner has the most nominations of any of these films, Star Wars is second. It's also a really cool thing, and I talked about this last time, I believe, after BAFTA went with visual effects for Blade Runner. Cinematography and visual effects have been lining up the last few years. It didn't happen last year with La La Land and who won visual last year? God, I can't even remember now. Okay, whoever it was. But then, and then Ex Machina split with. God, my memory is going to shit now. Who's been winning cinematography the last couple of years? Hang on, I had this all down, but then. Okay, that was yeah. I remember The Revenant in 2015. Now there we go. But then we've seen, and then Birdman with 2014. That was another weird one there. But otherwise, look at this. Now, Gravity won for cinematography that year, also won visual effects. Life of Pi won for cinematography, also won for visual effects. Hugo won cinematography, also won for visual effects. Inception won cinematography, also won visual effects. Avatar won cinematography, also won for visual effects. Let's see, what was the other one I was looking at here? Not Master and Commander. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, won cinematography, also won visual effects. Titanic is another one. No, Braveheart didn't win. No. There was another one back in the 80s somewhere, I thought. Oh, no, I was thinking of a separate one. Never mind. Yeah, and then after that it gets kind of weird because they didn't have visual effects category every year and so on. But yeah, look at that string they had there. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. At 5 years in a row where these two categories lined up. Plus, and, at the same time here, we're looking at, for visual effects, a film that has more nominations there. That's Blade Runner, and it's also Roger Deakins, his chance to finally win an Oscar. So, I'm going with Blade Runner for that one. And again, it could easily be War for the Planet of the Apes. There could be kind of an outcry from Fox and a couple of the other campaigners out there saying, come on, it's one of the best reviewed trilogies in recent years, in recent memory. We've been nominated every year for that category, for every film that we've released. Give it, this to kind of be the cap for the trilogy there. But it's that's the way it works sometimes. And I did really, really enjoy War for the Planet of the Apes. I haven't seen the new Blade Runner yet, but yeah. So for me, I would have put War for the Planet of the Apes in for Best Picture, and it would have probably been in for a couple other ones. But yeah, that one I would love to see it win. Weta with their motion capture. I think other than King Kong, we haven't really seen a big motion capture film win. At least from that same company there, at least that largely worked on it. So like, what was there was a couple other ones other than the other Apes films, but now they're not coming to my memory. We've seen, that the Weta company has been nominated multiple times, but it's very rare that they win. So this would be a case, for them to finally pick up an Oscar. But at the same time, I think it's Blade Runner. I think it's Blade Runner now. Okay, so that's those are the 7 categories there. So these are the 7 on the fence categories. These are the ones where it's either this, or maybe a third option in some of these cases, but not all of them. A lot of them, it's just down to 1 or 2. So, yeah, I've still got some mulling over to do in these categories, and we'll see what happens at the Oscars in 6 days. All right, yeah, that's something just to hold you over until we get to final predictions on Saturday.